I would like to introduce our next session, which is titled Nurturing Youth and Young Professionals. So we have a very youthful panel. The first panel is How We Got Here, Stories of Professional Journeys Across Indian Country, moderated by Cassandra Nguyen, Cooperative Extension Assistant Specialist, Department of Nutrition from the University of California at Davis, and she's been one of our planning committee members too. So we've seen each other on Zoom, but in person, oh my gosh, we get to feel and touch and see, smell one another. Okay, anyway, I hope you guys are seeing, smelling your neighbors too. Like, they need a little bit of love too, right? Because we're like the baby Zoomers. Okay, you guys didn't get that. Okay, over to you.
Hi, everybody. Hopefully you can all hear me. Anyone in the back, if you wouldn't mind just raising your hand if you can hear me okay? Thank you. So, hi, my name is Cassandra J. Nguyen, and it is a privilege to moderate this session. It is a true passion of mine to illuminate the paths that people take in their careers. My hope is that sharing these stories will help light these pathways for future generations. And this passion of mine comes from my own personal background. So I was born Cassandra Nicolaus. My last name came from my biological father, who immigrated from Germany. However, my 3 older siblings and I were raised by my mother in a working class home in the deep woods of western Washington between the Puget Sound and the Cascade Mountains. My mother's family originally immigrated from Europe, and they've lived in western Washington since the early 1900s. The legacy I was born into made it likely that I would drop out of high school, marry young, and face a hard life, coping with the injustices faced by many people marginalized and under-resourced in our society. And I have to say that's kind of the sterile version of things. Bev, yesterday evening, said that we should tell the truth. So I think that that pathway might have looked like abusing substances and having difficulties with police, as well as potentially me not being here today. So I'm so grateful to be on the path that I am, because that was the path that was illuminated to me as a young adult. And fortunately, my life took a really unpredicted turn. Through the support of the federal food stamp program, the time and patience of several kind people, privileges that are afforded by my own whiteness, and more than a fair amount of luck, I became a first-generation college graduate. I received a master's and a PhD in nutrition and developed expertise in evaluation and the academic understanding of food insecurity from the University of Illinois. And in 2019, after spending 5 years in Illinois, I was able to return back to Washington State to work with the now late Ka'imi Sinclair on a handful of her Indigenous health projects. Over the last 4 years, I've been learning about and finding ways to support Native American nutrition and Indigenous food sovereignty as a white ally. This work only continues to be possible thanks to the kind and patient Indigenous women who have invited me to work with them, particularly my late mentor, Ka'imi Sinclair, as well as the incredible Valerie Bluebird Jennergan. And of particular importance to me are the Indigenous women and non-binary students and trainees who I've worked with and been inspired by. To name a few include Sage Mednansky, Snowy Johnson, T. Benally, and one of our own panel members, Tara Maudrie. It is by the grace of these individuals that I continue to learn and contribute to this area. My hope is that my work continues to build the bridge between what we know and what we do to ensure that everyone has access to affordable, nutritious, and culturally relevant food. So thank you for the opportunity to share a small part of my story. It's with today's panel that my hope is that we can dive a lot deeper into the personal and professional stories of 4 incredible Indigenous women in various professional settings that support Native American nutrition. Again, I want to remind you that our goal with this panel is that these women's stories will illuminate and illustrate the various paths that we can all take in our careers, and ultimately that these stories add to the larger map of worn trails from our current and our past individuals that future generations may follow. Thus, I am thrilled to share the stage with Kelli Wilson Begay, Tara Maudrie, Dr. LaVerne Demientieff, and Teresa Jackson. In a moment, we will begin with each of our panel members providing a brief introduction of themselves and their current professional roles. We're then going to follow this with a few questions that we've prepared for each panel member to consider. And then, as time permits, we'll spend the final 10 to 15 minutes with questions from the audience, so both virtual and in person. Okay, so to start, I'll ask each member down the line to please introduce yourself and your professional role.
Okay. Hi, I'm Teresa Jackson, Mojave, Seminole, Muscogee Creek, Cherokee, and Yuma from Stillwater, Oklahoma, and I am the current Tribal Partnerships and Outcomes Coordinator for Oklahoma Tribal Engagement Partners, or OKTEP. And it is a mouthful, but very, very good words, and we spend a lot of time coming up with that name, so I try to say it as much as possible. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist and have a master's in nutrition as well, and completed a dietetic internship, all at Oklahoma State University. I'm a current PhD student working to finish that dissertation, so that's always the hard part, right? But I was born in Ada, Oklahoma, so shout out Chickasaw Nation friends who are here. And grew up in South Texas, and all of my family is in Oklahoma. And so we moved back there when I was in high school, and went to college there and just fell in love with Stillwater, Oklahoma. It's a fun college town, even though I don't partake in all of the partying and all of the fun things that come with the college town. It's the conveniences and the proximity, and getting to work with some wonderful people that I've actually started working with as an undergraduate. So my primary role, I split my time between 2 federal nutrition programs, and I know a lot of the times SNAP and FDPR kind of get a bad rap. The programs have come very far, so I always feel like when I have the opportunity to share a little bit more about those programs, I like to do that, because the truth is we are all in our own spaces working on food sovereignty and getting back to our traditions, but one of the big resources in our communities are those federal nutrition programs. And so it's important for us as Native people to show up and to have our voices heard in helping to shape improvements for both of those programs. So we have a SNAP Ed grant. We are one of 4 implementing agencies in Oklahoma, started in 2017, and we have slowly but surely been expanding with different tribal partners across the state. I think our goal is hopefully at some point to have SNAP Ed programs and SNAP Ed resources being utilized in all 39 of the sovereign nations in Oklahoma. So we've got our work cut out for us. The other part of my time I am spent working with the national FDPIR, which is the Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations, formerly Commodity Foods, to do a nutrition paraprofessional training project that we call Connect, or CNCT. It's the Community Nutrition Champion Training, and Kelli is also a part of that project, so we get to work together to travel. We're doing a lot of travel with that, but teaching folks that work within FDPR to become nutrition paraprofessionals, because they are the frontline folks. So it is empowering them to feel like they can also provide some nutrition education to their communities, to the folks that they see, on a monthly basis or sometimes more often than a month. So that's the short synopsis, and I'll pass it on.
Hello, everyone again. My name is LaVerne Demientieff, or Xilegg. My family is originally from Holy Cross and Anvik, Alaska, on the Yukon River. And I actually grew up going to fish camp, and my family subsisting for my whole my whole growing up, and then also continuing to subsist as an adult. I work at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I'm a professor of social work. I'm also a trainer on historical trauma, historical wellness, healing-centered engagement, utilizing the 5 C's, which I call compassion, connection, community, curiosity, and ceremony. And that is things that I have learned from elders about a good way to be as we engage in the work that we do. A lot of the research that I do focuses around community wellness, specifically with elders right now. And yeah, I'm at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and just excited to share a little bit more. I'll stop there.
Bonjour, my English name is Tara Maudrie. I'm an enrolled citizen of the Sault Ste. Marie Nation of Chippewa Indians. I'm Snapping Turtle Clan. Currently, I'm a third year, in the third year of my PhD program. I'm now a PhD candidate because I passed my exams, which is good. Thank you. I'm also currently supported by an NIH NERSA or an F31, so my dissertation research is supported by the National Institute of Diabetes, Digestive, and Kidney Diseases. And it's very similar to the work I talked about yesterday. And I guess I should say where I'm doing my PhD. I'm doing my PhD at the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health within the Department of International Health, which houses the Center for Indigenous Health, which is kind of funny that tribal nations are considered to be international health. And I'm in the Social Behavioral Interventions program, which is essentially just a very long way of saying I'm interested in health behavior change and food. So yeah, thank you all for having me here.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Kelli Wilson Begay. I come from the Kickapoo, Seminole, and Muscogee Creek people. Glad to be here and representing the few Oklahomans that are on the stage. Well, Teresa's here. And Valerie's been up here. Okay, never mind. I am trying to still figure out what I want to do when I grow up, so I really don't know why I'm up here. I think they just had an extra chair, and they were like, hey, you were up here already, why don't you just come on up? And so that's why I'm here. But I do have, I am a dietitian. I didn't know I was going to be a dietitian until I got the IHS scholarship, and they said to pay back, you have to be a dietitian. And I found that out in my, last year of school. So that's how I became a dietitian. And doing the work I do, and what I do now is really, I'm privileged to be able to do what I want to do, and owning my own consulting business and working with communities and with people and colleagues like those on the stage here. So I just feel really privileged and grateful to be here with you all.
Thank you. Great. So thank you all for those great introductions. I feel like I got to learn a little bit about each of you that I didn't already know, which is lovely. And I want to go ahead and transition to our first question, which is really what path brought you to your current role? What would you say brought you where you are? Which, Kelli, you've already kind of tiptoed towards this question, but I want to go ahead and start with you, Teresa.
Sure. So I also wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do, but I have a large family history of folks working for IHS, for Indian Health Service. And so I think I was kind of always pointed in that direction, just for the sustainability and experience and the option for early retirement. So I always think of that. My grandmother is one of 7 children, and she, 5 of them total, are retired IHS employees. And she, after retiring and having that comfortability and those privileges, that they then go on to serve the tribe. And so most of them are all serving on boards or different organizations and in different roles that are also servicing our tribe. So I think knowing that I wanted to also give back and work in community was a big thing for me. But early on in my undergraduate career, had to kind of figure out, I wanted the easy way. I had an early advisor, and I went to her and I was like, Tell me what to major in. I really don't know what's the good options. But I was very frustrated with her at the time. But she did say, I'm not going to do that. take a semester, take different classes, see what you're really interested in, what you're passionate about, to then go down that path. And so took a variety of classes, kind of narrowed it down, but really fell in love, of course, with food and nutrition, just because I felt very much at home. You know, at every family gathering, there's food. It's very much tied into our cultures, and it carries so much meaning. And so that's kind of what led me down the path to nutrition and dietetics. So that's how I ended up here.
Yeah, I mean, I think about this question, and I think that I always knew that I wanted to be a helper in the social work profession. From a very young age, I grew up with parents that were very, very strong and loving. They had 10 children, and I'm the youngest girl. And I have one younger brother, and the rest are a lot older than me. We grew up with a lot of love and taking care of each other, and we also grew up in a home with addiction. And so with that came a lot of unpredictability and chaos and abuse. And I think about how complex behavior is, and I'm very interested in that, the wholeness of who we are as human beings and all of our experiences that we bring to every interaction that we have. We bring our whole selves, and that includes all of the challenges and all of that as well. And my dad really taught me that, right? So just how to he shared, he was a beautiful person that had a lot of pain from the colonial trauma that he experienced. And I think about just how, again, how strong he was to have gone through that and still shared his heart with the world. He would have like a pot of beans cooking on the stove and just giving whatever he had to people that needed it. So I'm so grateful for my parents, for their modeling and for showing me that even through our traumas and our struggles, we have a purpose and we can still live good lives. And so I think that's kind of where it started. And my sister, who passed away from cancer when I was probably about 20 years ago, she became a social worker. And so I had a lot of amazing models. I showed you a couple of my mentors with elders earlier, people that inspire me to do the work that I'm doing. So with that, I'll pass it over to Tara.
Yeah. So I started my undergraduate education in pre-physical therapy and exercise science, and I was all set up to be a physical therapist, and I decided to take an internship with the Great Lakes Intertribal Epidemiology Center through their Native American Research Center for Health. So if there's any other NARCH babies out there, I was one of those. And that's really where I found my love for research. And then after I took that internship, I started working at the Urban Indian Health Program in Detroit, American Indian Health and Family Services. And a lot of that was really motivated by the fact that my grandmother, my Nokomis, was diagnosed with diabetes when I was in my undergrad. And as I went to appointments with her, she is embodiment of the word unconditional love and the sweetest person I know. But anytime a doctor would say, do you understand what a complex carbohydrate is, or do you understand what whole grains were, she would just nod her head and say yes, yes, and then she'd go home and she'd be like, I don't know what any of those words mean. And so that really inspired me to take a lot of nutrition classes. And then when I worked in Detroit, I became pretty close with the people that worked with the food sovereignty program, including Rosebud Schneider, who's here with us today. And that really sort of inspired my love for in food sovereignty research, because we were doing all this amazing work in community and nobody was documenting it, nobody was talking about it. And that's really why I decided I wanted to pursue a career in research. So I ended up doing my master's in nutrition at Johns Hopkins, and like a lot of Ojibways, I'm very headstrong and I don't really like being told what to do. And I realized that with just a master's, if I wanted to continue in research, it was going to be doing a lot of other people's work, and I didn't want to do that. So I continued on with the PhD program. And I really chose the program I'm in partially because of the mentors I have. I'm really grateful to work with people like Melissa Walls and Victoria O'Keefe, who are amazing Indigenous researchers who have supported me personally and professionally over the last 4 years. I'm really grateful to be here with you all.
All right. Okay, what was the question? I'm sorry. I was listening.
That's fair. The
Oh,
question,
how did we get here?
yeah, what is the path that brought you to your current
Oh,
role?
gosh. We only have 25 minutes. I'm going to take a little bit of a different route on this or for my answer, but I said yes to a lot of things, and I've done a lot of things, and I figured out I'm not good at that. I'm not going to do that because we don't want to do things we're not good at, right? And finding the things that really made me feel like I was contributing, that felt like I had a purpose, that really ignited that creativity that I didn't even know I had until I was older. So yeah, saying yes to a lot of things. I've worked in IHS, I've been a Fed, I've worked in nonprofit. I was in the Commission Corps, which same thing, I thought, I'm gonna do this forever and I'm gonna be set, I'm gonna have great retirement. Not for me. And I'm too much of an entrepreneurial spirit, and I wanted to do what I wanted to do, and I couldn't do that in a federal system. And so I kind of just kind of made my own path, said yes to a lot of things, and now I'm up here again, filling this empty seat that, so sorry.
That's a great answer. Yeah, so what I'm hearing is so many of your paths were informed by family members, other community members, both in your personal community, but in your professional communities, and when people invited you to things that you said yes, or you listened and saw where you could contribute, which is so incredible. So for time purposes, I'm gonna ask one more question, then we'll start taking questions from the audience. So my last question that I've pre-written is, can you speak to aspects of your role or the path you took to get to it that were particularly challenging, or how you faced those challenges?
You want me to start again, or you want to start, Kelli?
Oh, geez, I was really pondering that.
Oh.
You go for it.
Me, okay.
Yeah.
Just real quick, because my goodness, we've had a lot of challenges in the work that we do. I think just knowing, my personality, I tend to find a reason for those challenges, and move on. I think that's one of the things that I'm pretty strong about is, I know who I am because I have a wonderful family who instilled that in me from an early age. And so there have been times when my time is up. It's time for me to go on and to be somewhere else and to do other work. And so it's surprising to me, though, in knowing when to make those changes in my career, that I have, kind of had a mainstay in the team that I've worked with. But we have gone through several different organizations to come up with OKTEP, where we are now. So I think having that strong sense of self has been very important for me to get through those challenges, because at the end of the day, there's always going to be challenges. We know that. Our people are resilient. That's instilled in us. I feel like I was born that way, and it has really served me well to know that there are times, when it's okay to be done and to move on and to, not necessarily start over, because I take with all, challenges, all that I've learned, and there's things to learn in all of the challenges. So I think that has been really helpful for me, is I don't take it super personally. There are times when it's just time to move on and to do the next best thing. So that's my short answer.
That's great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I probably would say that, again, I agree, there's a lot of challenges. I think feeling whole in the institution and in other systems has been an incredible challenge. And, when I think in my early 20s, I started taking my language courses and learning from the elders. And that level of healing alongside my career path has been extremely beneficial, and that has really supported my own confidence and growth. Feeling a sense of belonging and connectedness has been essential to my success, and I think that you know, when I entered the university system as a professor a very long time ago, I was very, very, being whole wasn't a thing. Like coming into a space and, you know, with love and openness it just wasn't, I didn't have any like sense of that. Nobody was modeling that for me until I started co-teaching with Elizabeth Flegel, who is my elder mentor. And she brought to that space love and compassion, love into academia, love for students, for humanity, a very honest, open heart about her experiences. And I saw that, and I saw the way that it changed the rooms that we were in. People were yearning for that. And so I just emulate that. I just wanted to emulate that, and it felt so good to be whole and human in these spaces. And so I talk a lot about love at the university now, and bring that a lot into a lot of my spaces. But I think that was probably the biggest challenge, my own internal feelings of not being whole or not being worthy in this profession. So come a long way.
I think for me, maybe my two biggest challenges are in the same vein, and I think one of the first ones for me was really imposter syndrome. When I started grad school at Johns Hopkins, it's a predominantly white institution. It's an institution with a big name and a big reputation, and I came from a very small school in Michigan, and a lot of my cohort mates had come from Ivy Leagues, and they had studied nutrition in undergrad, and I hadn't formally studied nutrition in undergrad. And so I kind of came in feeling like I didn't belong. And then when we'd start to talk about nutrition in our classes, everybody was talking about nutrition in a way that didn't make sense to me as an Indigenous person. I wanted to talk about food security. I wanted to talk about what food means to us emotionally, what it means to us relationally. I wanted to talk about treaty rights. I wanted to talk about subsistence. And my program, at least in our coursework, was very focused on what happens once you eat the food. Physiologically, what does it mean to eat food and what happens? And that was not the part of nutrition that I was interested in. I was grateful to have mentors and other spaces with my cohort mates to discuss things outside of just physiological nutrition. But that was really hard for me for a while because it felt like I really didn't belong intellectually or on paper. But I've been really grateful to have really empathetic and kind cohort mates who are willing to talk with me, and people like you all here, other people doing this work in our communities, and to be able to connect with you all and people in my own community really brings me back to the why, and I think that got me through some of that like hard stuff. Yeah. And also food, lots of food.
Yeah, okay. So, just ditto everything they said. No, but really, I really didn't think about this, but I think the biggest challenge has been with myself. You know, it's like that constant struggle of, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing, you know, and am I making a difference? Am I, you know, honoring my ancestors? Am I, you know, all that kind of stuff. And did not mean to get emotional, but, you know, I think there's just a lot of things that you take with you on your journey. And, you know, thinking about just growing up, and, you know, I'm really good at knowing when they're going to cut off the electricity. It's like, okay, it says that date, but it's really not that date. I mean, so using those kinds of tools, you know, that, and have that in my toolkit to know when I can just pull those experiences and use them, you know, in different challenges that come up. You know, I think for me, it's like taking one challenge, one issue at a time, not trying to tackle this whole big mountain of things that you know and all the problems that you're trying to fix, you know, in our communities. So it's really kind of taking a step back and evaluating, okay, I'm gonna get through this one little thing, and then I can go to the next. And so anyway, so that's what came to mind.
Incredible. Thank you all for answering those questions. I feel quite inspired in hearing about your paths. So we are now taking questions via Pigeonhole from the audience. And so we have a question that is for the dietitians, and so this is for Teresa and Kelli specifically. Do you have strategies for encouraging more Native youth to pursue the RD credential?
I think don't give up. I think Ms. Bev had shared, with nursing, with these careers, the coursework is difficult. And I think finding folks, mentors, other folks in your course, in your classes, I think that's important to feel, to know that you can do this. I think it's vital for us to have more dietitians who are Native, who are Indigenous, because we know that there's going to be that understanding, instead of, prescribing a certain diet or saying you have to do this, or else, kind of using those scare tactics, that we can be more relational and we can, really just take that asset-based approach and, just encourage adding more as opposed to taking away. What's the common, for most clinical dietitians, I feel like. So I think that it's important, it's vital, but the best advice I can say is to don't give up. I think there's enough of us in this space, and I know for Oklahoma, it is a very small world, the nutrition and dietetic space in Oklahoma. So a lot of people, and if you don't, then you can always, reach out to someone, and they probably know someone else who could mentor you or could provide some job shadowing or some other experiences that could help be that encouragement or to help you learn and just to not give up, to pursue that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us as dietitians, being involved in like Indian ed in schools, or things like ACEs, it's showing up to those kinds of things where Native youth are, and being, that example and sharing your experience. And there's a lot of other different health professional groups as well, or task forces that are out there, so that's something that I would recommend.
Great. It sounds to me like folks that are interested in that route might seek out kind of the people who've done it before and lean on them.
Us.
Yeah. Yeah. So the next question is, how can organizations support and retain American Indian and Alaska Native young professionals while preventing burnout?
Pay them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Native professionals bring way more to the table than non-Native. Sorry, maybe, culture and lived experience should be compensated.
I think to build on what she said too, there were times in my graduate program where there were issues with the pay and stuff, and there's been multiple times in grad school I went months without getting paid by my institution. And one time I tried to talk to a faculty member about it, and they said, well, most grad students are working for experience. And I said, that's really cool, but experience does not pay my rent. So I need this money. And so I think that was a stressor that was weighing on me a lot during my coursework. And I wonder, what grades would I have gotten if I wasn't worried about paying rent that month because I hadn't been paid in 6 weeks or whatever. But beyond that, I also think things like the Center for Indigenous Health does a lot for us as students, where we get cultural leave. If I want to go home and I want to go rice, whatever, see you in a few weeks, bye. And I think things like that are really important. And I don't think grad schools are always flexible enough to offer that, but that's something they should be thinking about in the grad school space, is how can we support cultural leave, spiritual leave, and our food practices, because those are seasonal. And if you're away from home to do a degree, how are you able to get home? Are they providing, transportation costs, like your flight costs and things like that? So I think those are small things that can help to prevent the sort of spiritual burnout a lot of us feel.
And I think the only thing that I want to add to that is to not expect that we're going to fill that seat for every single thing. I think the expectations need to be lowered, just Just because you have a Native person at your organization, that doesn't mean that you can ask them to do everything that has any type of relationship to the work that we're doing. The expectation shouldn't be that we have to do everything. I think that's a big thing, but then also for me, it's been important for me, but I think it's also part of my personality. It's okay to say no. Like, we can't do and be everything to everybody. So I think that is important in knowing our own boundaries.
So I love this question, this next one from the audience. So thank you so much to who has posed it. And this reads, what was the most memorable creative moment to fuel your professional journey?
I think I was at this conference last year, so it would have been May of last year. And I had done a lot of food security research with the Baltimore Native community, and we had like 3 main findings, and I do a lot of community research presentations, or conversations is really what I call them, because it's more of like, this is what I found, is this what your reality is this what makes sense? And the first time I sort of talked to them about it, they were like, that's super cool that you've got these 3 things that people suggested, but they just kind of like looked at me and were like, that's nice, moving on. And last time when I was here, it was sort of thinking about like, what are my cultural values and how would we communicate this? And as Ojibwe people, we carry stories and we think about metaphors and we use things like that. And so one of the ways I now present that is I use a 3 sisters analogy to represent those 3 different sort of community improvements they talked about, and those fit super well within that analogy of, corn's our oldest sister, and beans provide nutrients, and squash provides protection for the system. And I don't have those results in front of me right now, but hopefully those will be published soon. But I think that was something that when I presented that to them again, they were so engaged with it, and they had so much to say, and they had so many thoughts about it. And so I think for me, combining not just like my qualitative or quantitative research expertise, but also like who I am as an Indigenous person, and what are my teachings and what are my plant teachings, and braiding those together provided a way that really engaged community that I didn't expect or see coming. So I think that was maybe one of my creative wins. I'm not a very creative person though, so.
That was a lie.
Yeah, I was just thinking maybe 8 years into my job at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, my uncle, who's my mentor and my teacher, came and talked to me, and he said, I just want to talk with you because I'm worried about you in these institutions and systems where we can, it's so often that we walk around the whole day in our heads in that space, thinking about deadlines and meetings and expectations and all of the things. And he said, I want you to practice every day, moving from your head to your heart. And just being aware of how you're doing. I don't want you to get sick. I want you to be able to do this work in a good way. Is probably the best advice I'd ever been given in my whole life. And the moment I started practicing that on a daily basis, just whenever I'd find myself like in my head all day for a very long time, just pulling myself back into my body, back into my heart, taking a deep breath, my interactions with colleagues improved. My ability to share with students was just so much deeper and richer. And my confidence and my love for myself grew. And that just was able to really express itself in my work. And so, again, just want to honor my uncle, but that was probably one of the biggest things.
Teresa, Kelli, do you have any additional thoughts?
Not really.
Okay, so then we have another question from the audience, which asks, how can non-Indigenous people best support and serve as allies in food and nutrition work?
I love what Tara said about really wanting to see the spirit and the connection to our emotions in these programs and all of that. I think that's essential so that we have a more holistic approach to this in our projects and in our programs, and we honor that. I think that really spoke to me.
I would say that, not just because Cassandra's up here, but she, for me, really exemplifies a really wonderful ally in this work where she listens, and she really listens not just to respond, but to understand. And I think that's something a lot of allies don't understand the difference between, is not just listening to react, but really listening to understand, and listening to understand when maybe something isn't meant for you. And so I've been really grateful that we have so many great allies in this work. And I think also, as Indigenous peoples, we have a really good sense of humor, and in research you have to. And I think sometimes just having a sense of humor in this work and being willing to be wrong and then laugh about it a little bit, I think is a good thing to do. So, that.
I would say be in community. You don't fully understand unless you're in the community with the people you're researching, studying. I mean, that could be, showing up to a basketball game on the res, because that's where everyone is. So, yeah, I would say that would be probably my biggest recommendation.
So I have two. I mean, and I think the theme has come out already, but at this conference. But I do want to also lift up that I think the best support and way to serve as allies is to lift up the work that our Indigenous communities and Native folks are doing, and bringing them along with you to share and present at conferences, to put them in front of funders, to also fund the work that we're doing. I think that speaks volumes, and a lot of the times maybe as Native people we're not necessarily at that table. And so, if you are at the table, think of those who aren't, and think of how you could then be an ally and bring other folks along with you.
So what I'm hearing is just how important it is for non-Indigenous white individuals like myself to listen, hear what's important beyond just the simple kind of nutrition information, but the other aspects of nourishment that Tara so gracefully presented yesterday. And if you don't have the fortune of working with Tara, I would highly recommend working with her. But if you don't have that fortune, also just being in community and giving yourself that opportunity to listen and learn through that. And then once you've learned all these things, because you've listened so well, advocate when there are not Indigenous people in the room. It's not about just when you're in conversation with Native people. It's about when you're not, and how can you lift them up. So we're going to move on to the next question. We have several more, but we just have a few minutes left. So we'll probably take maybe one or two more audience questions, and then I have kind of a closing question that maybe everybody can reflect on to put us off on a good note. So this question is, how do you combat moments you felt as if you were failing? How did you continue after this overwhelming work that is so big and larger than any one of us?
I think breathing, remembering to breathe, take a breath. I mean, really, that's gotten me through a lot of things. And yeah, taking a time out. And if you can, if it's not too overwhelming, to remember your why, your purpose. Why are you doing this work? Who are you doing it for? And going back to that, like the very basic tenets of what you're doing. So, and then breathing.
I think for me, when I submitted my NERSA for the first time, it did not get funded on the first round, and some of the reviewer comments were hard, like some hateful things that people said that should really not have been submitted in an NIH review. And it was really hard to read, and it was really hard on me. But I think the thing that kept me going is I did resubmit it after I really didn't want to, and my advisor told me I needed to. But one of the things that really kept me going was I was like, if they don't get it, they don't get it. I will find somebody else that will fund this work. We're going to find a way. This is important to community. I don't really care who it gets funded by. So I'll get it done. It's just a matter of who gets to put their funder name on it. So I think sometimes sticking to your guns and your community values is important, but it is hard. It was a lot of breathing, a lot of crying, a lot of calling my grandma, but we got through it, so.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was just gonna say, kind of beyond breathing, for me, there were times, or there are times still when days are hard, and I just have to be done for the day. I have to go home. I have to have a good cry. I have to watch some reality TV. I need to do the things that relax me. I need to spend time with my family, just to get my strength back up. And I'm getting emotional. I didn't think I'd get emotional about this, but there have been a lot of challenges. And so I think that has because then I go back to what am I doing? Why am I here? This is challenging, but at the same time, I'm not ready to give up yet. And so we're going to continue on. So it's just giving myself that time to get out the emotions, but then collect myself and then go back to war, because that's what it feels like sometimes. So I do think that just knowing what you can do to center yourself and to get back to your purpose, and understanding that about yourself, when you need that time to just be done with it, to not look at the emails that are continuing to come in, and to just kind of reflect and collect yourself, and then wake up the next day and I'm ready to go again. So that's really been it for me. Yeah.
I would just say, Rest is Resistance. That's a good book I just read, and there's so much to that. I think I didn't grow up having a lot of tools to handle my intense emotions. I just didn't learn them growing up. And so I often work with students a lot to create communities of practice around this, just because I think as we practice these skills and strategies, as we get more comfortable, whether it's breathing or meditation or movement in any way, it allows us to release a lot of that we're holding. I think we also have a lot of we are very empathetic people, so the energy of the world can really just get into our bodies and sometimes get stuck in there. So being able to find ways to release that is super important in what we do. So lots of challenges all the time.
Well, thank you for each of your reflections on that question. It's definitely a hard one. So I'd love to end on something positive, which is going to be our last question for the session. Unfortunately, we won't be able to get to all the audience questions, but please don't hesitate to connect with any of our panel members with any of your questions. So this last question is, what do you hope the next generation of professionals will be experiencing or working on in your field?
Hopefully food insecurity goes away, so that won't be a thing. But, oh gosh, I don't know, that's probably my biggest thing. Sorry, I don't have anything else to say.
I think that's a big thing.
I think for me, I think a lot about the harm that and this is a controversial opinion, but the words obesity and how we apply those to especially young Native children, and just this idea from the very beginning of their childhood that their bodies are wrong simply for existing or for being a certain size. See, I knew I was in good company here. Sometimes I get nervous saying that in nutrition spaces, but I really hope that my hope for the next generation is that they grow up not worrying about what their body size is, and they can eat something that feels good, and they can move, and they just don't worry about that. So I think about how much more powerful we would all be if our stomachs were full, because it's really hard to fight colonialism on an empty stomach, but also if we hadn't spent, like a lot of women spend their childhoods or their teenage years or their 20s worrying about what size their body is, and how much more time would I have had to focus on like cool food stuff if I wasn't focused on becoming smaller. So I think my hope for the next generation of food researchers is that we hope we're focusing on feeding ourselves, not starving ourselves. So that's my hope.
I would say that, and this is not maybe really, this is more general, but just being able to be whole in the spaces, starting off that way, being grounded in who you are so that your values, the values of your community, your ability to honor your ancestors and the work that you're doing starts at the beginning. So many times, we enter these projects and programs that are already established and they have, oftentimes Western ways of knowing or doing or values underneath them, and we're trying to really incorporate cultural practices and shift the way that it is. But if we can, so many of these things, if we can start from this way of groundingness and wholeness, incorporating spirit and honor for our ancestors, I think that's the way in the future, instead of trying to adapt, that we are creating these things. That would be my wish.
And I feel like mine is, maybe a good wrap up, but it's also bringing in some of the words that folks shared yesterday, is that we tell the truth. And we no longer have to, paint this watered down version of our realities. And so I think that that's my biggest wish, and I think it's happening, that we're being honest and we're being real. So it's happening.
Great. So as everyone's able, if anyone else is feeling the way that I am, I would love to give these 4 women a standing ovation. As you're able to, please join me in standing and just letting them know how inspiring this panel has been.